So, I had this weird impression, call it a flight of fancy, that some of my viewers might be slightly interested in a game series. It's not very well known. Fallout, something like that. It's only had a couple games to it. It's weird. It's a pretty short series, really, unless you count the tactics thing, which, I mean, nobody counts that, right? So we've only got, Fallout 1, 2, 3, and effectively 4, even though New Vegas is called New Vegas rather than 4. But I heard a weird rumor. It was pecking into my ear recently that there was this thing called Fallout 4, which was announced today, technically twice, actually. And I figured I'd go ahead and talk about it a bit with my viewers, and then do a couple of my own analyses about it and all that fun kind of thing. You know how it goes. It's a little thing, right? So I have Carrot on my cheek. So hi everyone. I thought we'd go ahead and start with some very, very basic things. First of all, I'm going to start with the unpopular stuff because I feel that's the best place to start. Because I have perspectives that are not the most popular, and that's just how that is, right? Right? Oh God, I'm so alone. No, I'm kidding. So, I didn't like Skyrim that much. I thought Skyrim was an okay game. It was worth once through. And I've actually played Skyrim pretty much all the way through, about 3 times. I played through the DLCs once. So we did that live on the stream, actually. And that's it. And I've actually talked about why Skyrim was actually kind of not my thing. And I don't want to rehash that too. It was a long diatribe, but it boils down to the fact that Skyrim felt like it was trying for multiple different things at once, and so it kind of failed at all the above. So it just came across as average. There were good parts to it, and there were bad parts to it, and most of the problems I have with Skyrim admittedly can be fixed with modding. But overall, Skyrim, in my opinion, is a worse game than Oblivion. A worse game than Morrowind, even. And Morrowind is a deeply flawed game, as I've shown off before, right? So, my biggest worry about Fallout 4 has always been, will it be another Skyrim? Will it be another game that's okay? As opposed to, if I could be blunt, New Vegas and Fallout 3, which I loved. I'm still looking forward to replaying New Vegas again, and I am actively replaying Fallout 3 right now, as you can see in the background here, for the roleplay. And I wouldn't just be doing it for the roleplay, I'd still be interested in doing it. So, I mean, hell, I still replay Oblivion every now and again, for God's sakes. So I'm hopeful that Fallout 4 will be great. I have no doubt it will at least be good. But I am hopeful it will be great. I just don't have that much faith in it. And that's kind of the problem. Now, it could have been worse. We could have gotten the announcement, and I was joking about this just the other night on my stream. We could have gotten Fallout Online, just like Elder Scrolls Online. And again, somewhat of a contentious opinion, excuse me. I didn't like Elder Scrolls Online, and that pretty much summarizes my opinion on it. So I'm like, oh God, but we didn't get that, so that's good. We still don't have multiplayer Fallout or Elder Scrolls, even though I think that's a thing that should have been happened since, Morrowind. But regardless, that's my first thoughts. Cautiously optimistic. Now, that being said, I have to share something that's kind of weird. When I first saw the Fallout 4 trailer, my reaction was, yeah! Actually, that's a total lie. I was actually crying. Because they did some really powerful, awesome stuff that I admit it freely and without hesitation. But the problem is, I remember the Skyrim trailer too, which was also amazingly well done and awesome. Also done with in-game engine, which trailers should be. Also done in a way that was like, yeah, I rewatched the Skyrim trailer so many times, I don't even want to get into it. So I am hesitant once more to judge whether or not how excited I am for Fallout 4, because I've already been burned in more or less the exact same circumstance. Recently, even, right? So I cannot in good conscience say I am that hyped for Fallout 4. However, there are a few things I caught in the trailer that I thought were pretty awesome. And you're going to have to give me a moment here, Because I need to do something weird in order to make something work. So give me a moment. I'm getting some worked in the background here. But yeah, the trailer says nothing for the most part. We'll have to see how good the game is upon it actually coming out and us actually watching it. However, one thing I thought would be kind of neat to do... I mean, Fallout 3 is great, but, you know, you could see that whenever, right? Why don't we do this? Now, first of all, done with the in-game engine, which makes a lot of sense. The thing that everyone has talked about is, of course, the idea of the flashback sequences, which are wonderfully chilling. I'm just going to say that right now. But I want to point out one thing really quick. You see this right here? When I first saw this, I was like, well, that's odd. And yet, watching this and watching the rest of the video kind of shows the direction they've taken the engine. It is clearly Skyrim's engine. You could see that in the animations of a lot of the characters later on. I'll show that off when we get there. But look at the colorization. At first, I thought this was actually going to be done stylized, cel-shaded kind of a thing. Kind of similar to, well, Wind Waker's the easiest answer. But, I mean, I've been playing a lot of games that have this graphic style lately. Obviously, a little more modern and more well done than Wind Waker, but same general concept. It's not supposed to look realistic. It's supposed to look however it's supposed to look. It's an aesthetic thing, right? I point this out especially, though, because this serves two wonderful purposes. First of all, look at the difference there. And this is the weird thing, because there isn't that much of a difference, and I can kind of demonstrate. Watch the trees in the background, okay? Watch the trees in the background. Very little change in the colorization and the lighting of the trees back there, right? And this is important because I'm going somewhere with this. I mean, obviously there's a difference between the past and the present. Duh. But what I mean by this, and it shows this later on when we see more of Boston, is I feel like overall they're going with a more stylized approach to the graphics. And I like that. I actually like that. As weird as that sounds, I think that that's a really good move for them. It's going to allow them to make something much more colorful, much more interesting, much more unique. I've often argued that graphics that try to have their own aesthetic touch rather than trying to reach for realism tend to last longer. You know, they age better, basically. I'll give you an example. Well, I don't need to give an example. You know what I mean, right? So you can still see a lot of the colors are still there. You can still see it's still being pushed out. It's bleached out a bit. But yeah, exactly, Souther. This is pristine compared to what we saw in Fallout 3. But again, I'm not complaining. I like that. I think that's a good move. There's also a hellaciously huge amount of attention to detail, but that's not really something I am surprised by. I just felt like commenting on it. And of course, dog meat. I don't feel like I even have to actually say anything about dog meat there. It's probably another in the proud family tradition of dog meats. This scene made me tear up a bit, right here. Maybe the fact that I've been watching a 2-year-old for the past almost a year really made that one hammer in for me. I know it's not dog meat, but then again, the one in Fallout 3 wasn't dog meat either. So, you know. This is really worthy of notation right here, by the way. First of all, this really shows the contrast. Here's this exact same neighborhood, right? Here's the exact same neighborhood in the past, and yet we see two things that show that this is an in-character exaggeration rather than an out-of-character exaggeration. This is not just a variance on the graphics. One, the trees and the sky and whatnot, that's just normal colors. That is actually what fall looks like. Two, the vertibird. Look at that vertibird. There's nothing stylized about that vertibird. That just looks like a normal vertibird, right? What I'm going at with this is what this is doing right now is exactly what I've been talking about several times. And for those of you who've watched my stream several times, I've actually mentioned in the past how awesome it would be to have a section of Fallout 4 happen in the past. You remember me talking about that? One of the things I mentioned was the casual exaggeration of the times. And that's actually what we're seeing through visual presentation here. Look at how much excessive brightness, almost neon, is going into the colorization, right? With regards to the cars, with regards to the houses. Look how much effort is made to make the grass just so. There's a sports car over there that's you can just barely see on the right that's kind of red. Everyone's wearing these nice, kind of colors. It's all deliberately designed to make the setting feel how it is in character. And I got to stress, this is an in-character thing. This is the 50s America aesthetic being pushed on people because life was nightmarish. Life was horrible. I've talked about this before. Life before the bombs fell was disgustingly, horrifyingly bad. So it makes perfect sense to me, this is theory crafting, of course, but it makes perfect sense to me that what we're seeing is all of these people deliberately doing this kind of thing to distract themselves from how horrible their lives are. That they are overcompensating with their visual presentation of how their lives are, how their houses look, how their cars look, how their clothing looks, specifically to try and do everyday life, when everything's terrible. Just my take on it. But again, I point to that vertibird and the ground, the grass, to get across the idea that that's exactly what they're going with. There's also one other nice little touch, and that was the soldier there. But I want to point out this too. Same general area, right? Trees are dead, of course, because of course they are. But one of the things here, and this is probably me reading way too much into this. Yeah, exactly, Raskor. One of the things that's noticeable immediately, especially to anyone with any graphics design thing, is there's actually a filter over the past. Well, there's a filter over the present, too. You see that filter right there? It basically is pulling the color out just a little bit of the terrain. Makes it look a little bit dirtier or whatever. That filter is completely gone here. In fact, there's actually a different filter here, which is pushing contrast in contrasts. I forget what it's called, but it's a type of thing where it will, for example, make colors on this side of the wheel pull out more from colors on this side of the wheel, brings them more brightly, right? I mentioned that, and again, reading too much into this, it's actually possible that in the present, with the fog and the dust and that overall thing, that's actually, again, supposed to be an in-character thing rather than an out-of-character thing. The idea that there have been so many long-term ramifications of the bombs falling that people still don't fully understand is kind of what I'm leading towards. The idea that the atmosphere is literally different. Still breathable, but fundamentally different. Fundamentally not the same as it was back then. Just that kind of thing. And if nothing else, the amount of topsoil that was probably out back when the bombs fell by itself would probably cause this kind of thing to happen. Does anyone remember the Dust Bowl, for God's sakes? So, just wanted to comment on that here. Now, that's awesome. I just wanted to let it play to that, but I want to show off one other thing really quick here. This is a theory thing and nothing else. All I have is one thing to ask. I can't see myself. I can only see the video. Okay. I'm kind of in the way. You see these guys right here? These two soldiers? Who are they? Now, this is before the bombs fell, so there's actually a lot of different options here, believe it or not. This could be... here, I'm going to shrink myself, because really the trailer's kind of the point here. These could be any number of different factions. I mean, the most obvious and apparent is it's the United States military, because the U.S. military was actually using power armor. It was deployed prior to the bombs falling, right? It could also be what would become the Enclave. I mentioned that, though. There's been a fan theory I've seen tossed around a bunch that we know the Brotherhood of Steel cropped up in the West Coast, right? We know that. But the question is, did they, for lack of a better way to put it, did they actually crop up there? And I've seen a lot of theories. I haven't really bought into them, but nor do I disagree with them. The overall point is, did those guys actually have any start on the East Coast as well, which is likely where this happens, given the Boston thing. However, as Django just pointed out there, my strongest theory about these guys is these are actually what will become known as Enclave troops, because as we know, what will become known as the Enclave were pretty much fully behind the entire Vault project as part of their endeavor, so that would make a lot of sense. Moving forward, Vault 111. So we know we're East Coast, if nothing else there. There's the world. Quick note, someone mentioned the cryogenic sleep idea. This whole section right here really lends itself towards thinking in that direction. You know, you get up and you're out there and blah, blah, blah. I'd just like to say that that ship is something I hope that actually can move or whatever. Because that's awesome. And that's all I'm going to say about it. It's awesome. Moving on. Now, okay. A few of these upcoming things are going to talk about what I'm talking about with regards to the colorization. The colors are a lot brighter and a lot less gray and green. For anybody who's played Fallout, there's actually an entire there's an entire mod for Fallout 3 that's literally get rid of the green saturation, because it just adds this whoosh over everything. You know what I mean? It's pretty clear, and it'll be obvious as we go through the rest of this here. This is actually a good example too. The colors are just much more stark and much and pull out more. There's much less of the green and the gray put all over them. You can actually see difference of colors. There's the yellow there in the grass comes out much more. The red on the tower is a lot more pronounced. That kind of a thing. The yellow there on that bus pulls out a lot more, you know, etc., etc. Here, this is a great shot right there. You can see in the background the city of Neo Boston or whatever. That pretty much says all I need to say about the colorization right there, although the robot does it too. Definitely awesome stuff. Really enjoying everything graphically and aesthetically speaking. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to point out back here. Obviously, we have a Pip-Boy. That's not a big surprise. But there was one other thing. Let's see if I can find the exact section where it showed up here. Ah, damn it. Here it is, I think. Now, that one over on the corner, this is, again, me reading way too much into things, but that is my job, so screw you. You see what that says way over there in the corner? It says Memory Den. Now, the way that sign is presented, that could be a sign that's from the past and they've repurposed to a new thing. I mean, we've seen it all the time. No, the city of Novak, for God's sakes. Or it could actually be a new sign. We're not actually sure. And I mention this because this is actually a setting point. Do we have the ability to construct something like a neon sign in the era of Fallout 4? That's what it comes down to. I talked in New Vegas about the ridiculous amount of thought that went into the setting. Now, granted, that was Obsidian, not Bethesda, but the point remains. If these people of New Boston have the ability to make something that complicated, that difficult to make, especially in a post-apocalyptic or post-post-apocalyptic scenario, that speaks volumes for how far they may have come in terms of society, culture, etc. I hate to keep referencing World War Z because I've been doing this for like the last year at this point, but it's the same concept as the Coke bottle. You remember that? The idea of pulling out, or was it root beer? I forget, the soda bottle, where he had the label and he made a point to keep the label so they could, you know, figure out what actually went into making these things. And so in the future they could reach the point where there was enough backing, there's enough infrastructure to make something so relatively simple as a bottle of soda, which under a post-apocalyptic situation is almost insane when you really think about it. It's the same thing with that sign over there. If it was root beer, I thought it didn't sound like Coke. If that sign over there is new, if it's old, well then none of that is valid. But I also feel like pointing out one other thing. There's some stop signs there that have been repurposed as actual lights. You see that? Stop lights, excuse me. Hang on, where are they? It's right above the guy. You can see them right there. It's debatable if they're actually on or not. That's the lighting isn't really good there, so I can't really tell 100%. But it's the same kind of thing I'm leaning there in general. Now, this is a cool shot, and I just felt like sharing it because it's a cool shot. I really like the idea of the massive ship there. A bunch of stuff. They seem to be doing more with highways. This is good. One of the things I actually disliked about Fallout 3, one of the nitpicks, really, small things, was the fact that there were plenty of partial highways, but honestly, the only one that actually did anything was the little town. I don't remember the name of the town. The town with the vampire problem in it in Fallout 3, where you can go up on a like half of a highway, and that's it. This looks like there's going to be more highways, so more actual stuff to climb, more verticality. Let's put it that way. So that's kind of nice. Is that a Deathclaw? Just wondering. Vertibirds, obviously, and again, if you pay attention to what I was saying earlier, this Vertibird looks almost identical to the last one. The only thing different is that filters over it. So again, colorization, right? Yeah, it's just reiterating the point I made earlier. I wanted to talk about these guys, too, because if there's really two things. Are these ghouls? Because if these are ghouls, they look really different. I know it's hard to get a really good frame thing here. Hang on, let me try and pull it. Ah, damn, I went just a little bit too... See, there's no frame back for this. There's just frame forward. Frame forward. There you go. You kind of see that? That is a fairly fundamentally different design if those are ghouls. But, of course, the reason I bring this up is the obvious. If those are not ghouls, what are they? It wouldn't actually surprise me if these guys are a new type of mutation, a new type of exposure, either to the FEV virus or simply to the radiation or something else. We don't know. Might be an entirely new variety of human whateverization. So, what are these and why? I only have like the most vague of theories, but that's more than just a style choice. Those guys look fundamentally different than ghouls do, so, you know. And yeah, there's a claw. That's right. Thank you for pointing that out, Moronic Genius. There's a claw there, too. So, yeah, I just thought I'd point that out. Here's some more of that colorization that I was talking about, in effect. The greens really punch out there. That's awesome. I'm just going to go ahead and summarize. I really like the look of New Boston, or whatever the name of the city is. Everything about it screams, yeah. Now, there's one thing. It's here soon. I got to find it. Give me a moment. I'm sorry, Maz. It seemed appropriate that on the day of my Fallout... my Fallout roleplay coming out every Wednesday is when Fallout 4 was in. I actually worked with Bethesda to make that happen. Yeah, I wish. A couple things here to note. Over there in the... You know what, hang on. Let me pull this. Right here. Okay, you see this? The tarp. Again, this is forgive me, but this is just another example of that setting building thing. That tarp is clearly not salvaged. It's also crude, but it is clearly, well, I shouldn't say not clearly salvaged. It is something that is new. It is something that was not simply there before and they're repurposing the building. They actually have tarp there, which they either made, again, implying the fact that they have the ability to make something like cloth in large matters like that, or they've repurposed it for whatever. But now that chem care, that's the one that I was actually really pointing out right there, and Moronic Genius really pointed that out. Chem care, again, the question I asked before is valid. Is that a new sign? Is that a repurposed sign? We don't know. And I'm just pointing it out to reiterate my point earlier with the earlier sign we saw. There's a slightly better shot of it there. There's also a sign over there, which I don't know what that reads. You see that one? The one with the diamond around it? And there's letters on it that aren't lit up? See that right there? It's really hard to make out what that is. But then we have that. Now, somebody was at... I actually had someone make fun of me. I think it was Pax, actually. When I said it would be really awesome if the ship moved. And I said, well, yeah, that ship probably won't move. But that ship definitely moves. You see it? So, and this is great. Hang on. You actually see how big it is. See the Vertibird right next to it? Right there? It's a great way to show the relative size, excuse me, of how large that airship, whatever that is up there. And again, we don't know if that's a new airship or no. We have no idea what the timeline of this game. Even if it's set around Fallout 3, though, we do know one thing. In this area, there's something called the Institute, which is something a lot of people have been wanting to see a lot of. And I'm included in that because I think the Institute is something that really should be expressed more of. So we've got a few more shots of the city. The city just looks gorgeous. I'm just going to reiterate that point. Now, but you know what? Before we get to the awesome ending, I want to point something out here. Pay attention to the location here. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure this is where you come out at the beginning in Vault 111. You remember how you go up and then you go like this and out and then you see the hill and everything like that? Considering that we have actual flashback for this happening right here, you know, more fuel to the fire of the idea that possibly we are flashbacking or actually playing parts of the past, which would be awesome, by the way. Yeah, I know, there's the baby right there. And that's why I was crying when I was watching this. The new Nuka-Cola machine. Don't really have much to add other than the fact that I really like the update. I do have one other thing to add, though. This is going to sound silly. But I want you to pay attention to the brick, okay? I'm going to let it play in motion. So really, really watch that brick, okay? Did you see it? The significance here is brick in just about every game prior to now has been a texture, a flat texture. That looks like it's actually mesh. I could be wrong, but it looks like the shadows are moving, and there's just a little bit of actual perspective change as you're going by it, which is awesome, and would be really, really cool if it's true. But even if that is a texture, that is a damned good texture for brick, and I just wanted to give tons of props to it, whether it is a texture or a mesh. A lot of this stuff is mesh, though. You can see there's a ridiculous amount of detail. I mean, for God's sakes, you can see the individual things in the box over there. You can see that there's the little maps. There's a bottle up there. There's a thing. There's the clock. All of this is meshes rather than... well, most of this, I should say, is meshes rather than textures. Also, there's a minigun over in the corner. And a bobblehead. We don't know which bobblehead, but I just felt like pointing that out. And naturally, we have our own power armor. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the obvious parallel here. This is something that everyone in the universe has commented on, the fact that there's a direct parallel between the player character here and his dog and walking away from the screen, which is a reference to basically every other Fallout. But there's one last thing I want to point out, and it's that right there. You see right behind his arm? There, right there. Now, I haven't actually been to Boston, so I'm really, I'm totally okay with people telling me I'm an idiot on this. But is that a hill, a mountain, basically, given that size, or not? Is there a mountain within range of Boston? Does anyone know this? Because that changes a lot of why I'm mentioning this. And while I wait for an answer on that, I'd also like to say that the main character having a voice is something that I have been in favor of for years. It's, I mean, for God's sakes, The Witcher does this. I've talked about this so many times. Several games do get it wrong, where they have a dialogue option that's truncated, and you click it and you say something that isn't that. Why not have a situation where you can actually... why not have a situation where you have a dialogue that says what you're going to say, and then the voice actor actually says it? It's not that hard to pull off. You know, I've often argued that in Dragon Age Origins there was no we could have had a voice actor for the main character. So point being, I'm in favor of the idea of a voice for him. So if that's just a mountain, I mean, I don't actually know. Like I said, I haven't been to Boston myself, so I don't know if the Appalachians reach that far, or if you can actually see the foothills around there. I don't know. So either that is... Okay, thank you for the answer. Okay, so OIT3C says that's the Blue Mountains right by Boston. So never mind, I'm flinging all my theory crafting on that out the window. When I saw that at a glance, when I first saw this trailer, it looked a hell of a lot like something that is not actually a mountain. It was either a crater or a ship or something, you know. Now, the possibility exists here for a fairly large amount of factionalization, and it was asked that I talk about that by Swag YOLO, so I have no problem doing so. First and foremost, there's a very good chance that the East Brotherhood still exists. If for no other reason, then... hang on. Then this. God damn it. There, then this. If for absolutely no other reason, this is something that lends me credence towards the idea that the East Coast Brotherhood still exists. I'm not actually that up on the designs of the differences in the designs of the suits. Moronic Genius, if they are super mutants, they also look different. I actually spent a while talking about that. But anyways, moving on. But even if this is not actually a Brotherhood power armor, I cannot picture any future in which the Brotherhood is not a factor on the East Coast. The East Coast Brotherhood specifically, they have been they've basically formed themselves into a new power, and it kind of depends on whether or not we consider Brotherhood of Steel the not Brotherhood of Steel the last DLC for Fallout 3. I can't remember the name of it. Crud. You're going to make me look this up, aren't you? Hang on, guys. I'm just going to start Fallout 3 really quick. Broken Steel. That's the name of it. Broken Steel. It's debatable if Broken Steel is actually canon. This is something that's been tossed around back and forth several times. So, to my knowledge, there's been no actual confirmation from Bethesda on whether or not Broken Steel is canon. If it is canon, we have the possibility of a situation... Well, actually, there's no real way on this. The Brotherhood, the East Coast Brotherhood, are the ones distributing the water. Now, whether that water is poison or whether it is not, that puts the East Coast Brotherhood as a massive point of power on the East Coast, which is why I say there's almost no way you could actually have the East Coast Brotherhood not be some kind of person, not be some kind of power on the East Coast at this point in time. So there's that. So I personally think that based, if nothing else, on Fallout 3, that the East Coast Brotherhood will be one of the factions out here. Now, a lot of people have been talking about the rise of a re-rise of the Enclave. Put me in the boat of people saying, no, I don't think that's actually a thing. I think for two fundamental reasons the Enclave should not be back in Fallout 4. Hear me out. Reason one, the Enclave have kind of been done. I mean, every single game prior to now, including New Vegas, has actually had the Enclave. And they've basically been worn down from the heights of their power every single game, for all intents and purposes. I know, they didn't really have much of a presence in Fallout 1. In fact, I don't even remember if they were hinted at in Fallout 1, to be completely honest with you. But they lost, and then they lost, and then they were barely their own thing. So I think the Enclave, that their story has been told. The Enclave story has been told. There's no need to have the Enclave active as a faction when the game begins. The second reason I believe the Enclave should be done is because, in my opinion, New Vegas basically ended the Fallout the Enclave perfectly, as was just pointed out on chat. The Enclave remnants, the few people who survived, the old men and women who were the survivors of an Enclave thing from forever ago, I'm ignoring the continuity thing. I'm just saying from a storytelling perspective, that is a perfect cap to the Enclave story. You can butcher them all, or you can, redeem them all and help them all and help them to retain the last of their lives, right? Now, you could also do something like the Enclave Remnant in Fallout 4, because, that was Enclave here and this is Enclave here, and obviously we're basically separate groups. So that's also feasible. But I don't think the Enclave should be an actual faction. Bear with me, though. I'm going somewhere in that direction. The next one I want to talk about is the possibility of the Institute. We already have two factions about the Institute, which we know of already. The Railroad and the Bastards. I don't know what the Bastards actually call themselves, and frankly, I don't care. It's the Commonwealth, I want to say, right? Something like that? You know what? I don't care. The Bastards. So that's two other factions which I would literally be genuinely disappointed if did not have a huge impact in this area. The Institute, who of course are tremendously technologically advanced, they can build functional human replicant androids, for God's sakes. So that's the kind of thing the Brotherhood would be a perfect storytelling thematic contrast to. Because that's been the Brotherhood's thing for forever. Now, if you'll forgive me for a moment, I have to hug my sister. Hug!
What are you postulating on?
I am doing a analysis on Fallout 4 trailer that just went live. And yes, this will be going to YouTube. So yeah, Esther Mr. Brotaku just said exactly right. Two completely tech-focused, tech-heavy... The thematic significance between the two is obvious. And it's also funny, because if you think about it for a moment, this is the East Coast Brotherhood of Steel, so they are actually yin and yang in terms of perspective as well, because we've seen how the Institute are, at least a little bit. The Institute, aka the Bastards, are totally okay with slave labor and policing their own and all these other horrible things. We hear nothing positive about them at all, right? Now that sounds a lot like the Brotherhood of Steel back on the West Coast. But again, this is the East Coast Brotherhood of Steel, the altruistic people, the people who actually wanted to, help the wasteland, who sat in and settled and said, okay, no, we're going to try and make this a better place. So again, we've got the yin and yang thing going between the Institute and the Brotherhood. Now, one other niggle here, though. What about the what do they call them? The Exiles? I can't remember the Outcasts. Thank you, Dylan. What about the Brotherhood Outcasts? What about the Brotherhood bastards, basically, who are just about the tech and who basically have the exact same mentality of the Institute? You could probably already see where I'm going with this. If I was doing this, I would not be surprised if the Outcasts are not their own faction. Maybe at best they are a sub-faction, but I think they should definitely be a part of the Institute. After all, what would the Institute love more than being able to have power armor at their side, having those secrets and all that technology unlocked for them to use and improve upon? Wouldn't it be awesome if in Fallout 4 we actually got, for the first time basically ever, improved power armor? Really, really better modern power armor. Modern power armor that could do just insane, ridiculous things. Tell me that wouldn't be awesome. And it's the kind of thing that I could totally see the Institute doing if they got a hold of the scientists and scribes of, for example, the Outcasts. Then we've got the Railroad. Now, we actually interact a bit with the Railroad in Fallout 3. The Railroad is obvious. I mean, they're called the Railroad for a reason. But one of the things I like the idea of is there was always a hint in Fallout 3 that by Fallout 3's time, the Railroad was basically growing. Getting stronger, getting bigger, getting more people, getting more backing, getting more funding, getting more personnel, all of that sort of thing, right? So I would absolutely love it if by the time this game starts, the Railroad is no longer just the rebels who are trying to free, but an actual faction with their own backing, with their own power base, with their own territory, with their own technology. A lot of freed androids who are working with the Railroad. And these people would be able to form a power, actually make the fight between them and the Institute an actual power struggle rather than big guy versus little guy, if you know what I mean. I would love to see it if the Railroad actually came in and were a real force to reckon with, you know what I mean? And of course, since this is how this is presented, well, okay, this isn't Obsidian. And I hate to say that, but the reason I say that is because if this was Obsidian, I could guarantee you that the Railroad would not be the good guys. They would just be a faction, and the Institute would not be the bad guys. They would just be a faction. There would be good and bad on both sides, and actual gray on both sides, right? And that would be awesome, but this is not by Obsidian. This is by Bethesda. So I'm not actually sure what I can say about that. I'd just like to pause for a moment. I know chat's talking. It's actually kind of hard for me to keep up with chat while I'm talking this. Forgive me, guys. I'm not ignoring you. But I'd just like to say I like the graphics. As I talked about earlier, I think the graphics look great. Sorry. I mean, that's my opinion, obviously. And if people don't like it, well, shrug. But I like the graphics of this game. I think they look fine. In fact, in this exact scene, I could praise the graphics, for God's sakes. But moving on. Yeah, you know what? Let's get something that's fundamentally, absolutely gameplay. This is gameplay footage right here. I want you to pay attention to the foliage on the ground, the presentation of the rock, the dunes there, the indents. All of that is meshed. All of this, you see that? Okay, this is a great example. Look at the terrain there. You cannot tell me that's all texture. You cannot tell me that's all texture. There's at least some meshing there to make that actually have three-dimensional look to it, to actually make it more fleshed out. Same thing with this right here, that walkway. You can tell that walkway actually has planks and whatnot in it that actually look like they are three-dimensionally rendered and actually meshed out rather than simply being a texture file that's going across it. You can't tell me this game has bad graphics. I'm sorry, you may not like them. That is totally cool. But you cannot tell me this game has bad graphics, because it doesn't. And I can prove it. Look at the iBot. Look at the design on that iBot. And it's got this thing right here, which is obviously some kind of cabling that goes up, and it actually has some indents in the grill in the back. I mean, for God's sakes. But, moving along. Oh, thank you, Mr. Brotok. I actually did miss that. So that says Diamond City Swatters. You're right. Okay, I see it now. I see it. And apparently, Power Noodles. Now that I'm looking at that other sign, the one above the tarp I made such a big a deal of over there. Anyways, so one other thing though, while we're on the subject, we're still talking about factions, right? One of the things I find myself wondering is if they're going to do something that I have wanted, well, since Morrowind, if I'm being honest with myself. And that is the ability to basically make your own faction. I know what you're going to argue. They did that in New Vegas. Not really. The independent faction was just kind of its own thing, its own separate, you step in and then take over an existing faction kind of a thing in New Vegas. I would love the ability to really sit down and actually claim a town. Claim territory, conquer chunks of the area, conquer the surrounding areas, defeat enemy leaders or assassinate them, or have different options to actually expand your thing. Blah 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 blah. I know that's effectively what will be referred to as a mini game aspect right now, and I don't want it to get into like some kind of Facebook kind of Farmville thing, because I hate that kind of crap. But I would love it if you could literally, like, for example, we're right here, right? You're in this chunk of thing, and you have your own faction or whatever. And over here is this town which you'd like to annex, but it happens to be under control of the blah blah blah, right? It could be independent or whatever. It doesn't actually matter. Let's just say it's being controlled by this. So you have the option. You can go over there and literally just say, we're going to conquer you, and try to convince them. You could have a speech check to try and convince them that it's better for them to be under your control than anyone else's control. And then you'd have to defend it against the attack from whoever previously controlled it. Or you could go over there and just lay siege to the town. Maybe use this awesome airship that's on the screen to lay siege to the town, which Samurai just said, damn it. You know what I mean? So actually go over there and physically conquer the place. And you could actually go over and wipe it out if you're an evil bastard, for that matter. You can go and just wipe the slate clean and have your own people colonize it. A little slower, but have there be some kind of gameplay benefits for having your own people there instead of just taking this other place. Why not have a thing where you can actually have a situation where you could actually assassinate the leader of the town quietly, sneak your way in, don't get caught, take out the leader. Bam, they have no leadership, and then have a situation where you can convince them to join. Just that kind of thing. I could go on this for like a while, but I just think that would be a really cool feature, and that's all I wanted to say about that. It's something I've been wanting. It's one of my biggest things on my wish list when it comes to Fallout 4. Speaking of which, some people, a lot of people asked me, what are your big wish lists for Fallout 4. This was a while ago. It's like months ago. The first is the thing I just told you about, being able to literally conquer the area. The second thing I always wanted was the ability to actually go into buildings. Have it be a city that's not just out and about and whatnot, but have plenty of inside in addition to outside. And as I'm looking at this, I'm not actually sure if they're going to do that, because a lot of this looks like just terrain. Like, for example, this chunk right here. Could you actually go into these buildings, these houses? It doesn't quite look like you could, but at the same time, it is possible that you can. And if you can, that would be awesome. The ability to actually have the indoor thing. It's actually probably one of the features I like best about, forgive me for putting this out, because, lots of people hate this game, Unity, Assassin's Creed Unity. The fact that you could actually go into all of those buildings. It's one of the things that made the city feel like a city, an actual expansive place you could explore, rather than the huts and hovels that we've seen in basically every other Fallout, with the sole exception of New Vegas itself in Fallout New Vegas. I think that would be pretty awesome. And again, it could go either way. Whichever direction, it could go either way at this point. I just felt like commenting on that. This is another good example, though, of the buildings thing. Because we can see there's possibility for it. I mean, there's railings there that you can actually get up on the balconies and whatnot. There's doors right there. There's windows. There's the possibility of actually being able to get into some of these buildings, but we don't know for sure. But if we're not, I'm sorry. Here, this is the actual picture I was hoping for most. Look at how much terrain there is. Cityscape. This was the biggest thing. This is my third thing. When everyone asks you, what is it you want out of Fallout 4? My answer was a city. I wanted a city. We've never actually had a city in Fallout before, and it makes sense. But now we're at the point we have reached the post-apocalypse. We've recovered from the bombs. We've recovered from the war. We've recovered from the Enclave. We're ready. We've recovered from the Master. We're ready to actually have a situation where we've got all sorts of actual city to explore. And I really like the idea of actually having a Fallout game centered around a city. Now, we've seen there's other than city. I mean, we saw in all that terrain that I was going through earlier, there's still grassland, there's still, there's still the woods, there's still the outlying areas and all that fun stuff. But look at how big look at this. This is in-game engine right here. Look at this. Look at how much cityscape there is. This is huge. This is several times larger than New Vegas was. I can tell you just by looking at it. So it would be really, really awesome if we actually get to explore that rather than just go through the alleyways and that kind of a thing. So that's all I wanted to say about the hangout. There's one last thing I wanted to look at really quick here. Give me just a moment. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, sorry, I was just checking something. Making sure that really was the same vault, which it is. I can confirm that. Now, of course, a lot of people think this is not in-game engine right here. I've heard like 5 or 10 or 50 people saying that in YouTube comments and whatnot. I disagree. This actually looks like it's still the in-game engine for me. If nothing else, because of the way the dog is moving, which is pretty one-to-one from how he was moving earlier. And again, the animations for that guy are very Skyrim, as I mentioned earlier, so that doesn't actually surprise me. So Fallout 4, that's basically all my thoughts, my hopes, my dreams. We'll see. We'll see. I would be lying if I said I am not hyped. Excuse me, to use my own words. But I'm really, really, really hoping that when we hear more at E3, it will be stuff that is actually information as opposed to just other things. But I will point out one thing, and I just feel like sharing this. One thing Bethesda's been good about since forever, since Morrowind, is they don't do trailers that are CGI. They don't do trailers that are pre-rendered. They do trailers that are actual game engine. Scripted, but still in-game engine. And I'd just like to say how awesome it is that there's at least one company, I know there's more than Bethesda, but there are several companies out there that still do that rather than pre-rendered garbage that doesn't tell us anything. So thank you, Bethesda, for actually giving me something to ruminate on, to actually go through and analyze. So that's all I got. I'm not going to stop streaming, but I'm going to cut off the recording. So this is for all you guys at YouTube. Signing off.